So this evening, we are continuing with our journey through the system of practice, the Jayaratna system of meditation, of practice, with its 5 aspects. So far we've looked at integration, integrating different aspects of ourselves, at positive emotion, at encouraging, creating the conditions for brighter, more positive states of mind to arise. And we are now starting to look at spiritual receptivity. So that's our topic for this evening and for the next 2 evenings as well, next week and the week after. So it is my delight to introduce you or help you deepen your sense of spiritual receptivity this evening. So I'm going to speak for, I'd say, at least 15 minutes, probably not more than half an hour. Depends how chatty and off on a tangent I go, we'll see. And after that, we will do some meditation. So we'll do some practice based on some of the things I've talked about. And depending on timing, we'll probably then go into breakout groups. And then we'll come back all together and we will conclude the evening with chanting the verses, the last Vandana. So I will start with a short Zen Buddhist story that I'm very fond of. So it is a story of a student and a master. So a student comes to see the Zen master. He comes seeking teachings, probably seeking higher teachings, special teachings, secret teachings. They're the ones we all want, aren't they? So he comes and the master greets him, welcomes him in, and he calls his attendant for tea. And the attendant brings a pot of tea and 2 cups. And the master takes a good look at the student and takes him in all his eagerness, desiring for special teachings. And the master lifts the teapot and he pours the tea into one of the cups. And the tea pours into the cup, halfway up, all the way up. And the master keeps on pouring. And the tea flows over the cup and over the tray and onto the floor and all over the place. And the student gets a little agitated and says, "Stop, stop, the cup is full. You can't get any more in it." And the master stops and looks at him and says, "Yes, the cup is full. I cannot get any more in." So this is a teaching on, in a way, when we're too full, too busy perhaps, when for whatever reason there's kind of no more space in us to receive anything. So I think the moral of the story is that we can't be very receptive if in some way we're already full. We're already full up. So it's something about what are the conditions actually, a whole range of conditions, inner and outer, that equip us to be receptive. So there's your Zen story for the evening. So thinking about this theme, I just thought I love practicing meditation in a receptive way. I feel very drawn to, over the years, various receptive ways of practicing. Things like doing a body scan, receptive to the experience in the body, to just sitting with not a particular object or focus, to just being present with whatever is arising. And a few of you, I'm sure, will know that I have a small friend who evokes this, who reminds me of this quality of receptivity, who will go on the shrine now. So this is my friend, the baby deck chair. I can go on the shrine. And it's just something about the deck chair that does evoke that for me, that sense of sitting back in experience, back in our body rather than pressing forwards. The kind of settling back, relaxedness of being in that more receptive mode. And as well as loving a receptive approach to practice, I also really love more active approaches, more approaches where we're more cultivating, consciously orienting towards positive, uplifting experiences. So probably often when I've led exercises, meditations here at the centre, it might have had that kind of flavour of a kind of turning towards, orienting towards something that uplifts and in a way gladdens, brightens the mind. So it's a practice that in the world of therapy, particularly somatic body-based therapy, is sometimes called resourcing. So in a way, it's a sense of going to those things that help resource us to face the challenges of life, to feel well, to feel stable. And in Buddhism, that kind of conscious orienting towards would probably be called cultivation. That kind of word would be used, or development, or bhavana, like the metta bhavana, the cultivation of loving kindness. So when we've done exercises evoking things that we feel grateful for, or memories of kindness to us, in a way that's what we're doing. We're orienting towards states of mind like appreciation, gratitude. I've led meditations on the 5 Buddhas, so where we consciously evoke their qualities, their symbolism, and turn towards that. Or when we look for an experience in the body of ease or pleasure of some kind. So it's quite a conscious turning towards, focusing. And for that, I sometimes use the image of this other friend, which I don't know if you can see it, is a compass. So that will go on the shrine as well. Okay. So it's a sense of orienting towards something. I like that image of a compass, that you set your compass point. You have a sense of a direction that you're headed in, somewhere you're orienting towards. So these are like 2 great poles of practice, the more active and the more receptive, the compass and the deck chair, however you might like to think of it. So I am a fan of both. I have noticed, I used to think that I was just really into receptive practice, and then taking a closer look at what I actually do in my meditation, there's a fairly good dose of that orienting towards, that resourcing as a thread as well. And I think meditation for all of us involves exploring and experimenting with both of those things and learning to discern what it is that your being needs. Does it need a bit more receptivity just now? Does it need a little bit more orientation towards a particular direction? And on Parinirvana Day at the weekend, Vajradevi used a very lovely metaphor of the garden, the gardener, which I think may come from Rick Hanson, who's a Dharma teacher and neuroscientist, I think. So it's a sense of you've got at least three distinct opportunities in a garden. One is to plant seeds. Sometimes it's the time to plant seeds. So in a way to sow the seeds of something quite positive. Sometimes it's the time for a bit of weeding, actually going through and removing a few things because they're swamping other things. So sometimes it's time for weeding, sometimes for sowing seeds, and sometimes it's time to just be in the garden, sitting back, maybe in your deck chair, just taking it in, enjoying it. So that's the more receptive mode, and probably a garden and a gardener benefits from all of those three things in their time, when their time is right. So, what is receptivity? I'll just say a little bit about what I mean by that. So for me, it's a way, I think, of talking about awareness, about presence, about being open to experience. So it's about that quality of openness to being present with what's arising. So it's got that kind of sitting back quality, letting things come to you rather than seeking them out. So in meditation, it might be a sense that the sounds can come to you. You don't need to go looking for the sounds that are in the space. They can come to you, they can be there, but you're in a more receptive mode. So receptivity is in a way opposite to being unreceptive, to being closed, to being fixed. So you could say that that's like the far enemy of receptivity. It's the opposite to it. But receptivity is also, it's not about being gullible. It's not about being kind of open to anything without discernment. So receptivity is somehow between those poles of a kind of fixed closeness and a kind of too open to anything ness at either side. So receptivity doesn't mean letting anything get into the driving seat of the mind and take charge of the steering wheel. It doesn't mean letting some negative state of mind like resentment or contempt or fearing the worst, whatever it might be. It doesn't mean letting those unhelpful moods take charge and jump into the driving seat. Sometimes it can feel like those things hijack your perspective, they hijack your view, your way of looking out at the world. And maybe that experience is more like a near enemy of receptivity. We've been open, we've been receptive, we've let something in, and then actually we've got taken over by it. So it's awareness that needs to be in the driving seat. Awareness and metta and loving kindness and wisdom. So that's a fairly crowded driving seat. There's at least 3 drivers, but they are close relatives and they get on well together. So this receptive aspect of our Jayaratna system of practice is actually more specifically called spiritual receptivity. So you might wonder, what's that about? What's the spiritual about? What does that bit mean? So I think it is partly about having awareness and wisdom and metta in the driving seat, as much as we can. So in a way that those qualities are what everything else is received into. It's what they're received by. I think that the spiritual also points to, well, what are we being receptive to? So it might be that we're being receptive to things that have some value, have some spiritual rather than worldly value. I might leave you in groups to talk about what you mean, but what you make sense of the word spiritual. But maybe things that have value and not in monetary terms, not in material terms, but things like courage in a friend, honesty, act of kindness. So they're things of value. It's about being receptive to whatever leads us to evolve, leads us to grow to our highest potential. So we're being receptive to these qualities, to views that are based on metta, rather than views like, I don't know, like it's a dog-eat-dog world out there. You know, you could live your life based on that view. Or you could live your life on a different set of views, more based on metta and giving people the benefit of the doubt. It might also mean being receptive to beauty in nature, in art, to something that is uplifting for you. Maitra Bandhu, in his book, The Journey and the Guide, which is about the system of practice, he writes, he describes spiritual receptivity as being receptive to those currents in the universe that lead towards self-transcendence. So it's receptivity to those currents in the universe that lead towards self-transcendence. So it's anything in a way that orients us not simply towards ourselves. It's not about abandoning self or not taking good care of this particular human being and body, but not being totally engrossed and only focused on me and the me project and what I want, me and mine, but something that is bigger than that, something that's beyond that. So in a way, that's what we're being invited to be receptive to, is anything that lifts us out of the narrow perspective of me and what can I get out of this, and has a bigger perspective. So that's a bit about what I mean by receptivity, spiritual receptivity. I've got a rather long list now of why I love a receptive approach to practice, in a way the benefits. I won't talk in great detail about them, but if you imagine for yourself a kind of a quality of practice where there's not too much doing or trying, there's a kind of settling back, an ease, a waiting. Well, what qualities might that support? What might, in a way, come of doing that? So one perhaps obvious thing is that it can support relaxation and ease, can soften tension in your mind, in your body. I think it's probably less likely to give you headaches than practices which have a bit more emphasis on concentration, on trying to cultivate something. So it can be very nourishing for our whole being to have chunks of our week, chunks of our day, where there's a kind of a dropping, an invitation to relax, to sit back. Secondly, it can be a really good antidote to some very specific and unhelpful mental habits. Things like the urge to control our experience, to try and have a particular kind of meditation experience. We've got an idea of what we want and we're going to have it. How often has that worked for you? You know it hasn't for me. So, but underlying that is just the habit of mind in meditation or out of wanting to kind of control, to make things go a certain way, to interfere, to manage. And that is quite a deep tendency in a lot of human minds, possibly more so in the modern world, in the West, I'm not sure. But there's certainly, you can see how the workplace might encourage some of that kind of drive and make it happen and make it turn out a particular way. And at times that could be really fruitful and what you need to do. But just watch out for it if it's kind of ruling your mind in meditation. And in that case, a receptive approach can be a really good antidote to that. It can be a good antidote to leaning forward mind. It's what I think of, that kind of compulsive planning, fantasizing, planning, I don't know, another holiday or another nice evening that you're going to have, that kind of forward-leaning mind. And anything that smacks of a kind of improvement project going on, either in relation to yourself or your partner, or your friend or your boss, whatever it might be, that kind of mindset where you're basically trying to improve something. You've taken it on as a bit of a project. So the third benefit I think it has is sometimes, not always, but sometimes it supports a calmer, stiller, more spacious state of mind. Because in a way, we're not trying so hard. So there can be something in that invites a more spacious quality. But not always. And I think much more importantly, what this kind of practice does is encourage us to be less bothered about how still, how calm, how spacious our mind is. So we get less irritated or less judgmental about when our mind's not like that, because actually that's not what we're trying to achieve. So it doesn't matter. We're just watching whatever's there. So that's a really helpful benefit over time, is just being more at ease with, less bothered by whatever the mind's doing. And that includes when it's not conforming to some idea you had about the calm, tranquil meditation you were hoping to have. Because a lot of the time we won't have those kind of minds. We won't have those kind of meditations. Fourthly, it is an antidote. This receptive approach is a great antidote to avoidance. The human tendency to avoid, to turn away, to not want to see things. So at its most basic, it's just acknowledging what's there. It's being honest. And that's just a really good starting point for any meditation, is to spend a few minutes just honestly acknowledging what is there. That maybe actually you're starting this meditation still feeling a bit busy from your day, or still feeling a bit irritated from a conversation, an argument you just had with someone. So just acknowledging this is where I am, this is my starting point. That's really helpful. And what that kind of, in a way, basic honesty can deepen into is a clearer and clearer seeing of experience. And what that deepens into more and more is insight into the nature of things, seeing how things are at a deeper, less personal level. Like Saravantu, I think also in that book I mentioned, says we need to be receptive to experience long enough to see change. So it's all very well hearing Buddhist teachings in theory about change and impermanence, but actually what we need is the direct experience of knowing that impermanence, knowing change in our own minds, in our own bodies, in our meditation. And being receptive long enough that we see things have changed. Where we started, where our mind was at the start, it's not there anymore. It's moved on. Another thing that it can support as a practice is I think it can grow resilience. Because we're basically practicing the ability to be with whatever's there. And sometimes, perhaps often, what is there is quite difficult to experience. Difficult states of mind, frustration, wanting things different. And in a way, rather than resisting that, trying to change it, we're just allowing that to be there. So we are kind of practicing the ability to just be with a bunch of stuff that is either mildly unwelcome or downright unwanted, but there it is. And that can be very helpful for our resilience in life in general. That does not mean that I'm advocating a kind of hefty, stoical, grin and bear it, hang in there, whatever happens. Be sensitive to yourself. This is about expanding what's called the window of tolerance, what we can tolerate, but we do that gently, not by kind of shoving ourselves up against it. Oh, look, I'm feeling receptive to a rather nice dog I've just seen there. Don't know if anyone else spotted that. They probably didn't. You're probably just looking at me. I have access to other delights. And yeah, so then the last reason that I'll mention is if we're being receptive to experience, in a way we're being receptive to this experience arising in ourselves. It's an experience of ourselves. And we are connecting with that, allowing that. We're being intimate with that experience of ourselves. And that willingness to just be with ourselves, whatever's happening, whatever we are, whatever's showing up as us at that point, that is an act of self-metta. And there is warmth, there is loving kindness in that. So I think receptivity as a practice can support a deepening of a kind of subtle but pervasive metta towards oneself, a willingness to just keep oneself company in a particular kind of way. So now here comes the health warning. Receptivity, I think, is in a way also a bit of a risk. If you think about it, when we're receptive, just generally in life, it means we're letting things in. We're letting things land with us. Like if we're receptive to feedback, we're entertaining the possibility that someone else's perspective on something, on us, is different to ours. We're allowing in that possibility. We're opening to the influence of others if we're receptive to them. We're opening to our own psyches, to our own depths, to our own shadows. That receptivity, it's got a quality of lowering your guard, of allowing intimacy. Is any of that sounding risky to people? Well, it may do. And it may not, we're all different. But there is something in that which may not be entirely safe or predictable. So there's something about, in a way, knowing that or having the ability to say no later if you need to show things the door if needed, to have some boundaries. So a key risk I've experienced of more receptive practice, a key risk for me is this, that something unhelpful gets into the driving seat of the mind, like a low mood or resentment, problem-solving mind. So whatever it is, something else, in a way, takes charge of the wheel. And awareness and perspective are pushed out. They lose their hold on the wheel. And so these, what are called sometimes afflictive emotions, these distressing, agitated, afflictive emotions that, in a way, assail and afflict our mind, they are in charge. There's a word, I think it's a Pali word for these afflictive emotions, and they are kleshas. And sometimes what happens when they've just taken charge and they are partying is that you've got a klesha party or klesha soup. There's a whole kind of swirling about of these less than helpful things. So what I've noticed recently is that I've got caring responsibilities in my life at the moment in a way that I haven't before. And, caring for people who are sometimes in really quite distressed states of mind. So what I found is that sometimes the low mood or the difficult mood that they might be in feels like it's somehow got inside my being. Or I might wake in the morning and in a way with that in the background, I feel a bit low. So it's like I need enough receptivity to be aware of that, to acknowledge the presence of that low mood, not to be too quick to kind of shut it out, squish it down, repress it, pretend it's not there, So there needs to be enough receptivity. But if I find that when I'm trying to meditate or in the day at any time, if I find that that low mood keeps displacing awareness and hijacking my dharmic perspective, then probably I need to move into a more active resourcing mode, doing more of that orienting, more of that making a positive choice to move in another direction. And if you're wondering what I mean by a dharmic perspective, so dharma being the teachings of the Buddha, the shorthand version, when I'm feeling like, oh no, I'm getting someone else's low mood coming in, it's my own mood, let's not blame anyone else, there's that mood. The shorthand version of what it means to try and restore that dharmic perspective is something like this. All this will pass. Life is just hard sometimes. It's not just me. And things will go better if I can respond to them with metta and orient towards the light, the good, the teachings of the Buddha. So that's sometimes what I'm trying to, in a way, get back to, is any of the perspective that some of those things will give me. So I'll just say one last thing, and then we'll do a bit of meditation. So I've just been really looking at how I combine the more receptive approach with more active qualities. So I'm combining receptivity with discernment, with actually knowing what's present in the mind as best as I can, and discerning if it's helpful or not, if it's skillful, ethical or not. And then on the basis of that discernment comes the opportunity for choice, to choose what practice will be helpful, to make a choice to go in a particular direction. What will help grow awareness and wisdom and metta? And then actually choosing to orient, to resource, to turn my mind perhaps towards a particular memory, towards a positive value. Oh, Priya, I might need you to do a bit of muting. Oh no, it's fine. So turning your mind towards a particular value, a quality of the Buddha, a teaching of the Dharma, whatever it is that will be resourcing for you in that moment, that will support being in a more positive state. And these are, in a way, not particularly kind of lofty, transcendent states that I'm talking about, but basic and vital things like feeling safe and at ease, connected to others, to yourself, appreciative. So they're basic, but they're kind of, they're pretty vital, aren't they? So there's different ways of combining receptivity with that more orientating approach. In a way, we can do that naming of what's present. We can bring in a Dharma teaching, a wisdom perspective, a question like asking, is craving present in the mind? Is aversion present in the mind? And yeah, we can orient towards something that is uplifting, that inspires us. And yeah, so we'll do a bit of that just now. We'll do 5 very short practices. None of them will be longer than 5 minutes, and I'll ring a bell between each. And in a way, I'll just be giving you a bit of guidance, a bit of an invitation to explore receptivity in some way. And yeah, they're all an invitation, which you are free to decline. In fact, I encourage you to, in a way, check in with yourself and make a choice. So if something feels unhelpful, please do not do it. Choose something different. Many things are available to you. The mindfulness of breathing is always available. Gazing at the shrine may be available. Walking meditation could be a helpful thing. So luckily you are at home and you can do what you like. So bearing that in mind, I will give you some invitations and see if you want to experiment with them, see what experiences you have. So there is no, it can't go wrong. It's like a toddler playing in a sandpit. You cannot do this wrong. In a way, there's just like, well, let's see what it's like. It will be interesting to see what it's like. So yeah, just to start, choosing whatever posture that you want to be in. Whatever supports your body to feel as much at ease as it can be. Supporting your body and your mind, your heart, to feel safe and at ease. Possibly taking a few slightly deeper breaths. Just inviting the body to settle a little. Have a sense of the ground beneath you. Those points of contact between the ground, whatever you're resting on, and your own body. Just feeling that sense of groundedness, connection with the earth. And just doing that, having that good starting point of just being honest with yourself about what's going on just now in your body, in your mind, in your heart. What's it like to be you just now on this Wednesday evening? And now I'll ring a bell to start our first period of practice, of experimentation. For the next few minutes, I invite you to just sit with no agenda. Anything can arise. I'm not even asking you to cultivate awareness. You have the luxury for a few minutes of nothing to do, no one to be. Now, in this second practice, we're still letting experiences arise, and experience just is arising. And now I invite you to have awareness as an anchor, a sense of being aware of experiences, present with experiences, whatever's arising. And if it feels a helpful support to that, you could label things: thoughts, memory, planning. Or you might even find it helpful to say, present with an anxious thought, present with an itchy toe. So whatever it is that you notice arising, find a way of having a sense of awareness in relation to experience. So in this third practice, I'm inviting you to bring in more of a wisdom perspective. So we're still allowing anything to arise, any experiences in the mind. And every now and then asking, is craving present in the mind? That quality of wanting something. Or is aversion present in the mind? That quality of not wanting, pushing away, resisting. So just with curiosity, if you can, without judging the mind for doing that, because it's what the mind does, but just noticing when those qualities are there a bit more strongly. Wanting something more than not wanting. Now, in this practice, I invite you to orient, to turn your mind quite clearly towards something that is of value, something that inspires and uplifts you. It could be a person, maybe a kind deed that someone has done. It might be a Buddha figure or a teacher. It could be a place in nature. So don't worry too much about what it is, just perhaps choosing the first thing that comes to mind that has something uplifting, cheering about it. So bring that to mind. And then open as fully as you can, be receptive to that experience. Have a sense of allowing it to permeate your whole being, your body, heart, mind. Receptive to this thing of value. You might need to use your imagination to have a sense of it, whatever it is, how it looks, the feel of it, what it is that you value about this. So exploring, then resting back, receptive to it. So in your own time, transitioning out of that meditative space, perhaps orienting back to the outside world, these other beings that we're sharing this evening with. So I know I promised you 5 practices. We only had 4, but I was a bit mindful of the time and giving us a chance to just connect in the smaller breakout groups. So that very special 5th practice, you'll have to wait for another day. So, Vajrapriya, could you?
Yeah, the last Vandana. This is the last thing in any spiritual practice. The verses which guard the Dharma, the verses which guard your spiritual practice. So not just finishing off the evening, but actually giving us all something to carry us forward into the week. When we're back out in the world as much as we're allowed to be. So yeah. So the Dhammapalamgata in unison. Sabba papasa karanam kusalasa upasampada sachita paryodapanam etam buddhanam sasanam Hamang chare sucharitam nanam ducharitam chare tamachari sukhang seti asming loke parangicha natavata tamataro yavata bahubhasati Yochapang Pisutvana Tamang Kayena Pasati Save Tamataro Hotio Tamang Napamajati Nati me saranang anyang Buddho me saranang varang etena sachavachena hotu me jayamangalam. Nati me saranang anyang Tammo me saranang varang etena sachavachena hotu me jayamangalam. Nati me saranang anyang Sangho me saranang varang etena sachavachena hotu me jayamangalam. Namo Buddhaya Namo Dhammaya Namo Sanghaya Sadhu Sadhu Sadhu